Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Making the Case. I'm very pleased to be joining you on this Wednesday evening once again. Let me welcome all of the viewers and listeners on television, on radio. A special welcome also to those of you who are joining me on Facebook. Please assist me, as is normal, in sharing this live so that we can reach as many people as far and as wide as possible, inside and outside of Guyana. We have, as usual, many topics on the agenda this evening. But before I delve into the substance of tonight, let me take this opportunity to say Shubh Diwali to our Hindu brothers and sisters and to all Guyanese at large. We will be observing and celebrating Diwali this weekend. It's a long weekend because next Monday is a holiday as well. And I know that Guyanese look forward very much to Diwali celebrations, where we celebrate our rich culture and heritage. All Guyanese join in this celebration. All Guyanese come out on the streets to witness the annual Diwali motorcade in a celebration of triumph and good over evil. So it's a beautiful, beautiful uh, Hindu holiday, religious holiday and celebration, and we wish all Guyanese a very Shubh Diwali. One more announcement before we go into some of the major topics for this evening. You would have seen, especially those who reside on the east bank of Demerara, that we issued a travel advisory. That is the Ministry of Housing and Central Housing and Planning Authority has issued a travel advisory for commuters who will be using the Mocha Road and the Massey Road. Uh, the intersections where those two roads meet the Eccles to Diamond Highway, that section has been closed off. It's been closed off last Sunday, and this will last until November 17th, which is next Friday. So the purpose of this is to link all of those roads. So to link the Massey, to join the Massey Road or Red Road to the four-lane highway, and similarly with the Mocha Road, to link the Mocha Road to the four-lane highway. That road is the second phase. That's the Eccles to Diamond four-lane concrete highway. It's the second phase of that project, which started at the Mandela Junction there and went to Eccles. And there we commissioned the roundabout at Eccles not so long ago. We rehabilitated as well the Eccles Hagsbosh Road. And all of this helped to ease the traffic congestion tremendously. And now we are on to the second phase, which is from Eccles to Diamond. And after that, we are starting the third phase already too, to go from Diamond to just beyond Grove at Busby Dam. So that highway passes through several main roads, and the Massey Road and the Mocha Road are a very important interlink. So you would have seen the traffic advisory that the Massey Road and Mocha Road have been closed off, but it's not the entire road. It's just that section where we are making the connection. So the road is still, most of the road, the upper and lower parts of both Massey and Mocha Road are still usable, so people can traverse there. It's just that when they get to the intersection where we have blocked off, they'll have to go around Greenfield Road. So just a little traffic advisory to those who are living on the East Bank and those who are traversing there. So we are looking though to complete that project before the end of the year. I know that many Guyanese, thousands of Guyanese who traverse the East Bank every day will be very pleased once that road is finally completed and commissioned. So we're hoping to bring relief to the traffic congestion before the Christmas season. So we're working very hard on that. We were delayed on two lots. One, because we had to terminate one of the contractors. And so we had to retender, and that contractor had a late start. And similarly, at the lot that went through that passes through Mocha Arcadia, where we had that issue with the informal settlers there, the commencement of that lot was delayed significantly as well. Otherwise, I'm sure that the entire road would have been completed by now. But those two contractors who are working on those two lots are working 24 hours so that we can complete as early as possible. So on Monday, we went to Parliament, both the opposition and the government. We went there unified, unified to pass a motion of support for the government of Guyana and the people of Guyana on the border controversy. And we went there to reaffirm the 1899 arbitral award and the Geneva Agreement of 1966. I have previously stayed away from speaking about our border controversy for fear of words being taken out of context and perhaps maybe saying the wrong thing, because you know it's such a sensitive matter, and always wanting to make sure that the language is right and is perfect and would be acceptable by the legal team that is handling our case, Guyana's case, before the International Court of Justice. But I believe that Monday's sitting was very important to reassure the public that the government and the opposition are united as one people, and that Guyana is united around this border controversy, and that the government and the opposition and our defense force and all the people of Guyana, we will do everything that we can that is legal, that follows the rules of international law, international norms and practices, that we will engage at every level, and that we will do all that we can to defend our borders. Because we know that Guyana is not only on the right side of history, but we are on the right side of the law, because we have never deviated from what has been set out in international conventions and what has been decided many decades ago as being our boundary with Venezuela. So just a little bit of history. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the history of how our borders were defined, and then how this controversy arose in the first place. And you know how we do it here on this program. We try to simplify everything in a way where all Guyanese can relate to what I'm saying, and so that when you leave this program, that you take away a little better understanding than when we commenced. So whatever knowledge I have, I try to use this time wisely to impart it on those who take the time look at this program and to share this program. So in 1897, 1897, under the Treaty of Arbitration, a treaty of arbitration was signed in Washington in 1897 between the United States of Venezuela and the colony of British Guyana. And the purpose of this treaty was to convene an arbitral tribunal. And the agreement between the two states, the British Guyana and Venezuela. The agreement was whatever is the decision of the arbitrators, that we will abide by that decision. And this is in relation to settling our borders. So we agreed that the results of the arbitration would be a full, perfect, and final settlement of the questions referred to the arbitrators, and that is the question of our boundaries. And in 1905, we signed the agreement with regard to the map of the boundary, which outlined the boundaries and the coordinates of both nations. Now, out of this arbitral tribunal came the Arbitral Award of 1899, which settled definitively in a full, perfect, and final way, which both Venezuela and British Guyana agreed would be the settled boundaries of both countries. Venezuela participated, had full participation in the identification of the boundaries, and was in full agreement of the boundary lines and coordinates. As a matter of fact, Venezuela got, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs went into great detail in his presentation. Minister Hugh Todd went into great detail in his presentation about how much landmass British Guyana got and how much Venezuela got. And it would have seemed a victory for Venezuela, who acquired out of that arbitral award 4 times the size of Guyana. So we are 83,000 square miles, and Venezuela got 358,841 square miles out of the arbitral award. So everybody was in agreement. The settlement was full, final, full, perfect, and final. And for 6 decades, for over 6 decades, the boundaries were internationally recognized, accepted, and respected by Venezuela, Guyana, and the international community at large. But in 1962, Venezuela unilaterally and arbitrarily decided to challenge the 1899 arbitral award, thus giving rise to this controversy of our border. I want to be clear that Guyana does not have a border dispute. There is no dispute because this was settled in 1899 out of a treaty that was executed between British Guyana and Venezuela, in which there was an arbitral award that both British Guyana and Venezuela agreed to abide by. And Venezuela unilaterally, on its own, is now challenging that award. So it's a controversy that we have, not a dispute, because this has been settled. Now, the Geneva Agreement, so I'm trying to go in chronological order. So Venezuela started to challenge this arbitral award in 1962. Then came the Geneva Agreement of 1966, which elaborated and which stipulates how this controversy is to be settled. And that is that it will be placed in the hands or in the jurisdiction of the United Nations Secretary General. So that is according to the Geneva Agreement. The Geneva Agreement stipulates that the person to settle this controversy is the United Nations Secretary General. So that is where it went from 1966. And that is in keeping with the Geneva Convention, the Geneva Agreement. So the United Nations Secretary General selected a process of a good office process, trying to facilitate and go back and forth between the two nations, Guyana and Venezuela, from that time all the way up until 2016 or 2017, thereabouts. And in all that time, Venezuela was unable to prove its case that the borders or that the arbitral award is not in keeping with our agreement of 1899. So they were unable to prove its claim of the nullity of the 1899 arbitral award. So from there, from the United Nations Secretary General, who had attempted to resolve this controversy over all those years, it then became clear that after all of this time and Venezuela's inability to prove its claim, and why were they unable to prove their claim? They were unable to prove their claim because it is arbitrary, because it is random, because it has no basis in international law, that there was no wrongdoing in 1899, that an independent arbitral tribunal was convened in 1897 under a treaty governed by international law, that British Guyana and Venezuela had teams who came together, who decided on the boundaries, who decided on the coordinates. The two nations agreed that this would be a full, perfect, and final settlement. And then for 60 years, it is accepted by both nations, by the international community. And suddenly, in 1962, Venezuela decides that somehow this award was unfair and that they are entitled to 2/3 of Guyana's territory. But we know that Guyana is on the right side of international norms and practices. We know that the Caribbean region, that the continent of South America is a peaceful zone, and we will do everything as leaders, as Guyanese, to protect our borders, to defend our borders, but we will do so in a peaceful way and in accordance with international law and practices. And we have never deviated from that process. We have always respected the arbitral award. We have respected the Geneva Agreement of 1966, and we have always acted in accordance with the provisions thereunder and utilizing the process that is set out in the Geneva Agreement to settle this issue. And so it was placed in the domain of the United Nations Secretary General, who tried for decades to resolve this controversy with Venezuela. But Venezuela is unable to prove its claim because it's null and void. And so the Secretary General has now decided that this will be a matter for the International Court of Justice. And so there is where this issue is now. It is before the ICJ. We know that Venezuela has raised questions about the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice that has been thrown out. It has raised issues about the exercise of the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice that has also been rejected. And so the case remains in the domain and in the jurisdiction of the ICJ. Guyana has been patient throughout this entire period. We've been following the letter of the law, and we are ensuring that we do so in a peaceful way. We have never been the aggressors in this situation. The aggressor and intimidator has always been Venezuela. And in spite of all of that, we have maintained our peace. We have remained measured in our approach, and we have maintained our position that we will continue to follow international law and practices. We will continue to abide by the rule of law because we believe that that is where the resolution to this controversy lies. It lies in international law, and we will abide by the decision of the ICJ. So we will not stray away from that position. And so that's what President Ali has made very, very clear publicly and to Venezuela. Not that we cannot engage bilaterally on this matter because we believe that we have to follow the Geneva Agreement, which sets out the procedures that has to be followed in relation to this matter. And so we will follow those procedures. And in following those procedures, we have moved to the International Court of Justice, where the determination will be made. So that's where we will leave it. So Venezuela, we saw also that Venezuela has announced that they will have a referendum later this year in December. They are going now to their people. They have taken an international matter, made it into a domestic one, and they are going now to the people of their country with 5 questions on a referendum. And we condemn that. It was condemned in the National Assembly on Monday as being null and void and of no effect on this matter. And we even saw Venezuelans speaking out. We saw a former minister of the government of Venezuela speaking out about this referendum and saying very clearly that Venezuela is trying to distract from the socio-economic crisis that that country is facing under the leadership of Maduro. So, and he stresses that the public statements, the intimidation tactics of the Venezuelan government, more than one members of the government, is to distract from that crisis there, not only a socio-economic crisis, but a political crisis that the Maduro regime is facing. So they have their general elections in 2024. That is coming up very sharply. And many people have opined in the public domain that this is a strategy to distract from all of the problems that Venezuela has, and it has a lot of problems. People are fleeing Venezuela, and you've seen that. Many migrants are coming over to Guyana or going to different parts of the world and fleeing the economic hardship that that country is facing. So they have real problems over there, and this rhetoric, many people believe, and I believe as well, is to try to unite Venezuelans around a single issue, try to ignite a sense of patriotism among their people and possibly uh, earn some votes for the Maduro administration. Unfortunately, Guyanese have to listen to some very scary rhetoric sometimes coming out of Caracas. But we believe that we are doing everything that we can. We are doing everything that we can to have this controversy resolved in a peaceful way, and that the decision of the ICJ will be forthcoming, and we will abide by the decision of that ICJ because we know that we have a strong case, that we have been following the law for all of these decades. We have been following the law, and we will not deviate from that. And we will not engage in unhealthy banter with Venezuela. So I know, it's a sensitive issue. Sometimes it's scary to think about, but I believe that if people have information and they know what is going on and they understand the history of this issue and how this controversy came about, I believe that they will know that Guyana is safe in the sense that we have always done the right thing. We have always been doing the right thing. We have always been following international law. We have never violated any treaties or conventions um, internationally. And so we believe that our international partners, the Commonwealth, CARICOM, the Organization of American States, we believe that all of these organizations will speak up on behalf of Guyana, and they have been doing so already. And all of our bilateral partners as well will be on our side, and we urge them, and we have been urging them to stand on the right side of history and on the right side of law. That is in Guyana's defense. So um, I thought I would take a little time tonight just to speak a little bit about this controversy so that people have a little better understanding. I know sometimes people don't have the time to tune in to Parliament for 8 hours, 10 hours that we're there sometimes. So I wanted to just take a little bit um, of time on this program to speak a little bit about the border issue, and hopefully to bring some comfort and relief to those who are listening. Last week, I was in Venezuela, sorry, I was in St. Lucia for a gender equality forum for parliamentarians. So I didn't have a live program last week. And sometimes it's very challenging with our work schedule and travel schedule to be here every Wednesday. But as long as I am around, I ensure that I come on this program and we can talk about real issues that are affecting people, things that matter to people. So last week I was in St. Lucia, like I said, and we were talking about the role of parliamentarians um, on gender equality and gender empowerment. And as usual, Guyana was the star among these during these discussions. Sometimes we compare ourselves to the developed world where gender parity is concerned, and on many other issues as well. It's just a habit that we have to compare ourselves to North America and Europe, and to say that we should be doing more or we should be further along. And then you go to a conference, and this happens to me a lot. I go to a conference and I'm there with sister countries, Caribbean countries, Latin American countries, and everybody's very proud to report on the progress that they've made, and rightfully so. All progress and milestones that have been crossed should be celebrated in every jurisdiction. Similarly, here in Guyana as well. But when we go to these conferences and fora across the world, and we are joined by regional countries, it's a good thing because it reminds me of just how much progress we have made here in Guyana. And I'm always very, very proud to speak about Guyana's track record of achievements when it comes to gender equality. And we have done a lot more than many, many countries on this part of the hemisphere. So in many countries I've noticed that there is a minister that is responsible for gender affairs. Many countries in the region and in Latin America have that structure in their government, that there's a ministry for gender affairs. And on the face of it, it's a very good thing. But when I examine the work that those ministries do, and then I examine the work that we do under our structure of government here, I recognize that it's better for us. We have a better structure in the sense that multiple people are responsible for ensuring that we have gender equality and that we improve gender parity. So you would have the Ministry of Housing doing its part, for example. You have the Ministry of Human Services doing its part. You have public service doing their part with in terms of granting scholarships to women. You have the Ministry of Agriculture empowering women, getting them more involved in agriculture, getting them involved in different programs. You have the Ministry of Tourism that has programs geared at ensuring that women have empowerment, that women have access to opportunities and empowerment. So when you have all of these people who have various programs and initiatives under their portfolio, you recognize that the agenda is quickly advanced. The agenda of ensuring that there is women's empowerment and gender equality is further advanced in an accelerated way because there's so many initiatives that women can participate in and benefit from. And I made that point. And of course, given any opportunity to speak about our very robust housing program and the achievements thereunder, of course, I will go to tongue on on that issue at any conference. So I spoke about how many women have received house lots over the last 3 years. Over 43% of all of the land that we allocated went to women. I spoke about 54% of all of the land going to young people between the ages of 21 and 35, a great percentage of whom are women. And I spoke about our help for our vulnerable people, our low, moderate, and middle income earners who have received combined 92% of all of the land we have allocated in the last 3 years. So when when people want to judge us, judge Guyana, judge the government, whether it's the opposition, whether it's people outside of Guyana, we have to go to the facts. We have to go to the numbers to prove what we're saying because we're not just about talk. We ensure that we have the statistics and we have the proof to back our claims that we are making significant strides here in this country in terms of women's empowerment, gender equality, and the overall improvement of the quality of life of Guyanese all across this country. And so people must know that, and people must know the facts. And I just listed many of them for you, many programs through different ministries, through different programs that see the development of people, not just women, but people in general, women, men, children, initiatives in every sector, in every ministry, under the stewardship of every minister in the government, from the president right down. Everybody's portfolio consists of something in relation to women or vulnerable people or indigenous people, minorities. And all of this contributes to the overall development of the country and the improved well being of our people. Whether you live on the coastland, in the hinterland, whether you're Afro Guyanese, Amerindian Guyanese, East Indian, whether you're Muslim, Hindu, Christian, we're all one people, one Guyanese family. Coincidentally, the president, when I was at this gender equality forum in St. Lucia, we were having our own um, ministerial forum here on gender equality. And I listened to the president's speech there at the opening ceremony. And he did exactly that. He spoke about the progress that our government has made over the last 3 years. In 3 years alone, the progress. And he listed all of the spaces where women are making significant contribution. He spoke about his own office. He started at home in his own office, where in OP's office, 82% are women who work out of the office of the president. His secretariat being 95% women. The Presidential Youth Advisory Council comprising of 70% women, and this will be young women. The permanent secretaries, along with the director of budget, 75% women. These are women in significant positions, top tier positions that are responsible for important decisions every single day. These are women who help to govern this country. These are public servants who help to make decisions in the best interests of every single community and in every sector of government. We always say that women deserve to be at the decision-making table. But where is that decision-making table? It's not one table. It's everywhere. It's in all of the ministries. It's in every arm of government. It's in the judiciary. And he spoke there too about the composition of the judiciary. Wonder if I can find that now. He spoke as well about 65%. 65% of the people on the bench are women. In the part-time job program, this comprises of 70% women. And this was one of the objectives of the part-time program, to ensure that we can give work to women who either have been involved in the job market in an informal way in the past, meaning they were not employed and in a structured way, and that they either were self-employed or maybe have a small business that they were doing, or working out of their home or something like that. They were part of the informal economy. We wanted to target those women to ensure that they have a stable and secure income. But we also wanted to target women who have never worked before, women who may have children but want to make an entrance onto the job market. So we wanted to ensure that they were given an opportunity to start working. And it's very difficult for them. Some women who have never worked before, who are caregivers, to move from being full-time caregivers to full-time employees. Sometimes that transition is very difficult. And so we wanted to give women and those women and men the opportunity to transition in a smoother way from being unemployed and at home being caregivers to a part-time job, and then maybe a part-time job and an opportunity to study, to improve themselves. so that they can transition out of that part-time job and maybe then are able to apply on their own for a full-time job in which they can earn an income that they can support their families. That's the overall objective. That's the aim. That's the goal of this part time jobs program, to give people an opportunity at employment and to make themselves viable on the job market. So it's not intended for people to stay there permanently, but for people to transition out of. And sometimes that's all people need, an opportunity, an opening. And once they are given that opportunity and that opening, they can use that to springboard into something else. And so a lot of people who are on the part-time program are also studying and using this time very constructively and wisely so they can then transition out of that part-time work to full-time work. President Ali also spoke about how we are creating opportunities, like I mentioned before, to in tourism, where we saw recently the Eco Lodge that is constructed there on the East Bank in the Diamond area, where there's a consortium of 120 women who came together, pooled their resources, and are now shareholders in that project, giving women the opportunity to create wealth for themselves. And also, we saw the consortium to do catering services to supply the oil and gas industry. That consortium includes mostly women who are doing the catering services for the oil and gas sector. So many, many opportunities. And he gave statistics as well about participation of women at the RDCs, which comprises about 62% women, the NDCs, 70% women, municipalities, 50%, 25% of women, for example, sit in the legislative agenda globally. That's an average. So an average of 25% composition of the legislative agenda, assembly in countries globally. That's the average. In Guyana, it's 37%. So that's why I made the comment and the observation earlier that we have a tendency to compare ourselves to the developed world. And many times, even in that comparison with the developed world, we outshine. And we see that the progress that we've made here in Guyana significantly is significantly more than that is achieved in the developed world. And many, many times, even more so than other Caribbean countries right here in this part of the hemisphere and in Latin America. Many, many times we have made far more significant progress in these areas and on these sensitive issues than we know. And the only way that we can know and appreciate the progress that we've made is if we examine what is happening in our country and what is happening globally. And then we understand and appreciate the significance of the work that the government is doing and the progress that we are making as a country. So and that's why I welcome those opportunities to go abroad sometimes to speak about the progress that we're making here in Guyana. And people are always very, very fascinated by the speed also, not only the progress, but the speed at which we are able to accomplish all of these things. So they always want to know how is the housing program working? What initiatives are you guys using to achieve your objectives? What's happening in education? What's happening in the healthcare sector? What's happening in tourism? How are you guys handling cost of living and that kind of thing? So we are always very happy to share our experience here, and especially in the oil and gas sector. We're always happy to share our experience so that those countries and those responsible for decision making in those countries can be enlightened and can go back with fresh ideas and initiatives that they can employ in their own country to advance their own development. So finally, I see I have another 10 minutes or so. I wanted to address briefly uh, a press release I saw from the APNU last week. I believe it was November 4th. And the APNU attempted to contrast their approach, APNU's approach, and PPP's approach to national development. Let me start off by saying that that is incomparable. APNU, APNU's approach to national development and PPP's approach to national development is incomparable. It's not something to compare because everybody who's watching this program knows that the People's Progressive Party has a track record of achievements and that the APNU on its own, the APNU combined with the AFC coalition has a track record of failure. No achievements of which they can speak of, and they've had a recent 5 years in office to prove to the Guyanese people that they are capable of leading this country. They were given a chance. That was their cry. After 23 years under the PPP, that was their plea to the people of Guyana to give them a chance that they have a better plan and that they will do better for Guyanese. And they got a chance. They got a chance in 2015 to prove to this nation and to prove to their supporters and to Guyanese that they were worthy opponents of the PPP. And what did we see during those 5 years? Immediately, we saw a return to all of the old ideology and philosophy of the PNC. We saw a lot of consumption. We saw a lot of wasteful spending on frivolous and irrelevant things that do not add value to the lives of ordinary people. We saw rank corruption by ministers in the government. We saw neglect in the economy. We saw 40,000 people lose their jobs through mismanagement of various sectors, including the sugar industry, rice industry, mining sector, agriculture, tourism, private sector. We saw many businesses close. We saw a lot of people who went back to the 28 years of dictatorship, who during that time fled Guyana. Many people went away after 2015 when the APNU came back into government. And we saw for those 5 years lies and broken promises. They promised that they would include young people in the government. We saw once the cabinet was appointed, we saw the old faces that many of them who've been there for decades already. We did not see them. We know they use the youth vote. They appeal to young people to vote for them. And many young people gave them a chance. And then we saw the youths being cast aside for the old party membership. We saw that there was no vision for the country. We did not know what the PNC or AFC were doing in office. We did not know what the plan was, what President Granger's plan was, where the country was expected to go after their first term in government. We had no idea what the program was going to be, what the vision is. And so we saw a lot of neglect, wanton leadership, and everybody doing their own thing. It was a hiram scarum government. And that led to the decline of our economy, loss of jobs, and no housing program, neglect in the water sector, no new secondary schools were built. We saw the imposition of 200 fees and taxes. We saw taxes on water and electricity. We saw the removal of subsidies for our pensioners in water and electricity. We saw punishment. That's what we saw. Punishment on the APNU AFC coalition. Only 3 years ago, only 3 years ago, we voted them out of office because we rejected their bad leadership, their mismanagement, and their untrustworthiness. I see them now trying to make a comeback. I see that they are trying to convince the people once again that they are different and that they suddenly have all of the answers to Guyana's problems. Never mind that they are the contributors to most of Guyana's problems, but they are now offering themselves up as a solution to Guyana's problems. But no attempt to disguise themselves will mislead the Guyanese public. And people have to remember that. We have short term memory. I know that it's quick for us to get consumed with daily life and daily activities. Everybody is hustling for their own. Everybody's working. They have kids. They have a life of their own. And people get caught up in that. And how soon we forget about how lost we were in the 2015 to 2020 period and how hard life was during that time, especially the uncertainty of the leadership during that time. And then now we have the APNU coming back around and saying to us that they're going to give a livable wage to people. Never mind that when they were in office, they spoke about salaries, increase in public servant salaries, but they gave themselves a 50% increase in their salary. That's what they did. So if you're going to decide how to vote and you are looking at the track record of a political party, that's how you have to analyze it. You have to take their programs, take their promises one by one. And we have done that many, many times here on this program, on this same program, making the case. And that's why it's called Making the Case, because I like to engage in comparison of the APNU, the AFC, and put them together. They cannot compare to the track record of the PPP and to the achievements of the PPP. It's in comparison. There's no comparison there. They are not worthy opponents, and they're certainly not worthy of office. And they have proven that to us over and over again. So if you want to know who to trust, you have to look at the party that has a track record of keeping its promises. You cannot accept an Aubrey Norton or anybody from the opposition now who comes to you and say, we will do this, when we saw them do the exact opposite when they were in office. They spoke already. This is not the first time. They're speaking about some of these things. So what is they spoke about? Livable wage. They promised to create jobs. They're promising to create jobs when they lost 40,000 jobs, as I mentioned before, as a result of mismanagement, corruption, lack of care. Then they said, when they got into government, that it's not government's role to create jobs. The president himself said that. President Granger said that. It's not the work of the government to create jobs. He said that when they put the farmers on the breadline, the rice farmers, they said rice is private business. That's what they told the rice farmers after they went to the rice farmers and promised them $9,000 bag for a bag of paddy. They said rice is private business. They said they want to increase exports. It was the APNU that put a tax on exports. A tax on exports. Never been done before. We've removed that. This is in their statement, by the way, their press release that I'm quoting from. Increase exports, expansion of rice, and like I said, they said rice is private business. Now they're promising expansion of rice. They're talking about building infrastructure, not just for maintenance or replacement. Now, the PPP is not building infrastructure for maintenance and replacement only. We are also building new infrastructure. And you see that. You see the new bridge across the Demerara River, new highways that have never been constructed before to open up new lands for housing development, for commercial development, private development, which will also create jobs for people during the construction phase as well as upon completion, and creating affordable housing for people. They talk about expanding, wanting to expand micro and small businesses when during their time they reduced the small business grant to an amount that is insignificant to certain people. And so there's a long list that I can go through in this one press release alone and rip to shreds the promises that they are now making about how they will improve standard of living in this country. But I see that I'm almost out of time, so I'll have to wrap up now. But we have to be aware of this. It sounds good. Sometimes when we read these press releases or we read some of the narrative or the content, and I said that before when I examined the 2015 manifesto, how nicely it reads, how inviting it is, how convincing it can be. But when given the opportunity to lead as they were given in 2015, they were a total failure at implementing their own promises and at ensuring that the lives of Guyanese are improved. So how can we believe them now? We cannot. We cannot believe their lies now, and we have to remember that it was only a short time ago that they were given the opportunity to lead, and they totally squandered that opportunity and disappointed every single Guyanese, those who didn't vote for them and those who voted for them. All Guyana was disappointed. And so we have to remember that period, and we have to remember of how incompetent and how untrustworthy the APNU and AFC are. And it is our duty to ensure that they do not come anywhere near the seat of government again. That is all the time I have this evening. I want to thank you once again for joining me. If you haven't shared this program as yet, please do so now. And I look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place. Do have a great rest of the week, and God bless you.